Welcome to M24 Health. Today we're talking about one of the most common foods on the planet, something most of us grew up drinking, then questioned, then maybe stopped, and what the latest science says about 5 things it does that almost nobody is talking about. That food is milk. And before you assume this is just another video about calcium in bones, it isn't. What researchers have been uncovering over the past decade goes well beyond calcium. It touches sleep, muscle repair, cancer prevention, brain protection, and cognitive aging. Most people look at these benefits one at a time. One nutrient, one food, one health problem. But the reality is that aging doesn't happen in isolation. Every system in your body is connected, and when you understand how those systems work together, you start looking at something as simple as a glass of milk very differently. Let's go through all 5. Benefit number 1. Milk before bed converts into melatonin and gives you deep sleep. Warm milk before bed is one of those old folk remedies that science dismissed for decades. It turns out science was wrong. Here's what actually happens biochemically when you drink milk before sleep. Milk is rich in tryptophan, specifically from its casein and whey proteins. Tryptophan is an essential amino acid, meaning your body cannot produce it. You have to get it from food. Once tryptophan enters your bloodstream, it crosses the blood-brain barrier. In the brain, it gets converted first into serotonin, then into melatonin, the hormone that regulates your sleep-wake cycle. The conversion pathway is tryptophan from milk to serotonin in the brain to melatonin in the pineal gland. A systematic review published in Advances in Nutrition in 2023 examined the full body of research on dairy products and sleep quality. The conclusion was clear: dairy products are notably rich in tryptophan, a key substrate for serotonin and melatonin production, which are instrumental for initiating and maintaining sleep. But it goes beyond just tryptophan. Milk also contains zinc and magnesium, and these minerals serve as cofactors in the enzymatic conversion of tryptophan into serotonin and then into melatonin. This means milk isn't just providing the raw material for melatonin, it's providing the cofactors your body needs to actually complete the conversion efficiently. There's also a component called alpha-lactoalbumin, found in whey protein, which increases the ratio of tryptophan to competing amino acids in the bloodstream. This ratio matters because tryptophan competes with other large neutral amino acids to cross the blood-brain barrier. When alpha-lactoalbumin raises this ratio, more tryptophan gets through to the brain, which means more serotonin and more melatonin production. Research published in Sleep Biology and Rhythms found that melatonin-rich milk fortified with alpha-S1 casein tryptic improved primary insomnia in a randomized placebo-controlled trial. Here's an interesting additional finding. Milk collected from cow's milk at night contains significantly higher concentrations of melatonin itself. Animal studies show this night-extracted milk has enhanced sleep-inducing effects compared to regular daytime milk, though human trials on this specific version are still in progress. High concentrations of casein, present in all milk, are also responsible for the release of opioid peptides during digestion. These opioid peptides have a calming, sedating effect that may contribute independently to sleep quality. The practical implication: warm milk approximately 30 to 60 minutes before bed, on a relatively empty stomach, maximizes tryptophan availability and conversion. The warmth of the milk also matters slightly. Warm beverages are associated with parasympathetic nervous system activation, which shifts your body from alert mode into rest mode, independent of the biochemical effects of the tryptophan itself. The folk wisdom was right. The mechanism is just more sophisticated than anyone suspected. Now, one important caveat: some research suggests that in order for dietary tryptophan to meaningfully affect brain melatonin levels, it needs to be consumed in a context where competing amino acids are minimal. Milk works best for sleep when it's not consumed alongside a large protein-heavy meal, because other amino acids will compete with tryptophan for brain entry. A small glass of warm milk on an empty or nearly empty stomach before bed is the most effective protocol based on current evidence. Let's move to benefit number 2. Benefit number 2: milk rebuilds muscle faster than most protein shakes. This is probably the most counterintuitive item on this list for anyone who spends time in the fitness industry, where protein shakes, BCAA, and post-workout supplements are a billion-dollar business. But here's what the research shows. Milk contains 2 distinct types of protein: whey and casein. This combination is actually unique and is precisely why milk outperforms many protein supplements in real-world recovery scenarios. Whey protein is fast-digesting. It spikes amino acid levels in the blood quickly, ideal for immediate post-workout muscle protein synthesis. Casein protein is slow-digesting. It creates a sustained release of amino acids for hours after consumption, ideal for preventing muscle breakdown during the recovery window. Most protein shakes are one or the other. Milk naturally provides both simultaneously. A study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine examined female teen sport athletes recovering from a sprint and jump protocol. Participants consumed either 500 milliliters of milk or an energy-match carbohydrate drink. The milk group showed significantly better preservation of muscle function, better counter-movement jump performance, and better sprint recovery at 24, 48, and 72 hours post-exercise. Another study compared A2 milk, regular milk, and placebo in male team sport players after muscle-damaging exercise. Both milk groups showed significantly faster recovery of sprint performance and jump height at 48 hours compared to placebo. The mechanisms involve more than just protein. Milk's carbohydrate content, lactose, provides a rapid energy source that replenishes muscle glycogen depleted during exercise. Most protein shakes have little to no carbohydrate. The 4:1 ratio of carbohydrates to protein in chocolate milk has been specifically identified as close to optimal for post-exercise glycogen restoration and muscle protein synthesis simultaneously. Milk's electrolyte content, calcium, potassium, sodium, magnesium, helps restore electrolyte balance lost through sweat, which is critical for muscle function and preventing cramping. Milk also has a high water content, providing rehydration alongside protein and carbohydrates in a single beverage, something a protein shake with water achieves, but plain protein powder does not. Research published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition found that milk was as effective as, and in some measures superior to, commercially available sports recovery drinks for muscle glycogen replenishment and protein synthesis signaling after endurance exercise. Here's the number that puts this in perspective. A standard whey protein shake contains 20 to 30 grams of protein, typically from a single fast-digesting source, costs several dollars per serving, and requires mixing in additional carbohydrate sources to be fully effective post-workout. 500 milliliters of whole milk provides approximately 16 to 17 grams of protein in the ideal whey-to-casein ratio, 24 grams of carbohydrate, electrolytes, vitamins D and B12, calcium, and rehydration for a fraction of the cost. The research is clear. For most people doing recreational to moderate training, milk is not an inferior post-workout option. In many studies, it's actually superior to commercially popular alternatives because of its complete nutritional profile. Why don't fitness brands advertise this? Because you cannot patent milk. Now let's move to benefit number 3. Benefit number 3, calcium in milk binds cancer-causing bile acids and reduces colon cancer risk by 15%. This one is less well known, but the research is substantial. Colorectal cancer is the third most common cancer worldwide. Its risk is influenced by diet, and the mechanisms by which certain foods either increase or decrease that risk have been studied extensively. Milk's relationship with colorectal cancer risk is one of the more well-established diet cancer associations in the literature. The primary mechanism involves calcium. Here's how it works. Your digestive system produces bile acids to help digest fats. After digestion, these bile acids move through the colon. When bile acids accumulate in high concentrations in the colon, they can irritate the colonic mucosa and act as promoters of tumor development. They effectively act as carcinogens at the level of the colon wall. Calcium from dairy binds to these bile acids in the colon lumen, forming insoluble calcium salts. These calcium bile acid complexes cannot be absorbed and are excreted instead. The result, bile acid exposure at the colon wall is reduced, and cancer risk decreases. Calcium also has direct anti-proliferative effects on colonocytes, the cells lining the colon. It promotes normal cell differentiation and inhibits the rapid, abnormal cell division that characterizes cancer development. The World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research have reviewed this evidence and concluded that dairy consumption, particularly milk, has a probable risk-reducing effect on colorectal cancer. Meta-analyses of prospective cohort studies have found that higher milk and dairy consumption is associated with approximately a 15 to 17% reduction in colorectal cancer risk. A dose-response relationship has been found. Higher intake correlates with greater risk reduction, though the benefits plateau at moderate intake levels. Vitamin D in fortified milk provides additional cancer-preventive effects. Vitamin D has been shown to regulate cell growth, inhibit cancer cell proliferation, and promote apoptosis, the programmed death of abnormal cells. The combination of calcium and vitamin D in milk creates a synergistic anti-cancer effect that neither nutrient alone provides as effectively. It's important to note that the protective effects appear strongest for colorectal cancer specifically. The picture is more complex for other cancer types, and this shouldn't be extrapolated beyond what the evidence supports. But for colon cancer, one of the most common and most preventable cancers, the evidence that regular milk consumption provides meaningful protective effects is substantial and consistent across multiple large studies. For context on what a 15% risk reduction means in practice, colorectal cancer has a lifetime risk of approximately 4 to 5% in developed countries. A 15% risk reduction from regular dairy consumption brings the to approximately 3.5 to 4.25% meaningful across a population of millions. Let's move to benefit number 4, which may be the most surprising one on this list. Benefit number 4: milk contains glutathione, the master brain antioxidant that prevents Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. Glutathione is the most abundant antioxidant produced in human cells. It's often called the master antioxidant because it both neutralizes free radicals directly and regenerates other antioxidants like vitamins C and E. In the brain specifically, glutathione is critical for protecting neurons from oxidative stress. Neurons are extraordinarily metabolically active cells that consume enormous amounts of oxygen and produce large amounts of free radicals as a byproduct. Without adequate glutathione, neurons suffer cumulative oxidative damage over time. This damage contributes to the development of neurodegenerative conditions, including Alzheimer's disease. Research has consistently found that glutathione levels in the brain decline with age, and that this decline is significantly more pronounced in people with Alzheimer's disease than in healthy age-matched controls. A study from UNSWA's Sydney Center for Healthy Brain Aging found that increasing glutathione levels reduced oxidative stress, reduced neuroinflammation, and reduced amyloid pathology in an Alzheimer's mouse model, while also improving cognitive performance. Here's where milk comes in. Milk, particularly whey protein fraction, contains precursors to glutathione, including the amino acids cysteine and glutamine. Cysteine is the rate-limiting precursor for glutathione synthesis, meaning it's the raw material that's most often in short supply. Whey protein is one of the richest dietary sources of cysteine available. When you consume whey protein from milk, you're providing your cells, including brain cells, with the building blocks to synthesize more glutathione. Research has explored the relationship between dairy intake and cognitive decline with impressive sample sizes. A systematic review and dose-response meta-analysis published in 2023 in Advances in Nutrition identified 15 cohort studies with over 300,000 participants and a median follow-up of 11.4 years. The conclusion was a nonlinear inverse association between dairy intake and cognitive decline or dementia, meaning higher dairy consumption was associated with lower risk of cognitive decline. Additional mechanisms beyond glutathione include beta-lactalin, a peptide derived from whey protein during digestion. Research has found that beta-lactalin crosses the blood-brain barrier and has neuroprotective effects. It improves memory retrieval, executive function, and attenuates cognitive decline. Studies in Japan found that individuals who regularly consumed fermented dairy products had better cognitive function and memory recall than those who did not, even after adjusting for other dietary and lifestyle factors. The bioactive peptides generated when you digest milk, particularly from casein and whey, have effects on the brain that go well beyond simple nutritional value. They interact with receptors, modulate neurotransmitter systems, and provide neuroprotective signals that whole food nutrition provides and that supplements struggle to replicate. Vitamin B12, present in milk in meaningful quantities, is essential for myelin production, the protective sheath around nerve fibers that enables fast neural transmission. B12 deficiency is associated with cognitive decline and neurological dysfunction. Regular dairy consumption contributes meaningfully to B12 status. The cognitive protection from regular milk and dairy consumption is one of the more consistent findings in nutritional epidemiology. It doesn't eliminate Alzheimer's risk, but the evidence suggests it meaningfully reduces it. Given that Alzheimer's disease currently affects tens of millions of people worldwide with no effective cure, and that the cognitive protection from diet accumulates over decades, dietary choices in midlife that reduce long-term risk matter enormously. Now let's move to the fifth benefit. This one is less biochemical and more systemic. Benefit number 5. Milk contains nutrients that support multiple body systems simultaneously, and understanding this changes how you think about nutrition. Every system in your body is connected. Aging doesn't happen in isolation. Milk is an unusual food because it contains a combination of nutrients that affect sleep, muscle repair, cancer prevention, brain protection, bone health, cardiovascular health, and immune function all in one whole food. Let's look at what's in milk from this integrated perspective. The protein matrix casein and whey together provide sustained and immediate amino acid delivery. These proteins contain all essential amino acids, making milk a complete protein. The specific amino acid profile, rich in leucine, promotes muscle protein synthesis through mTOR pathway activation. This matters not just for athletes, but for aging adults trying to prevent sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass that accelerates after age 40. Research shows that muscle mass in older adults is one of the strongest predictors of longevity and functional independence. Adults who maintain muscle mass as they age have lower rates of falls, fractures, metabolic disease, and all-cause mortality. Milk provides the nutritional substrate to maintain muscle throughout the lifespan. Calcium in milk is the obvious nutrient, but its role goes beyond bone health. Calcium is required for muscle contraction, nerve signal transmission, hormone secretion, and blood clotting. Every time your heart beats, calcium is involved. Every nerve impulse requires calcium. The 300 milligrams of calcium in a glass of milk supports systems you never think about. Vitamin D, when milk is fortified with it, is perhaps the most multifunctional nutrient in modern nutrition. It regulates calcium absorption in the gut. It modulates immune function. Vitamin D deficiency is associated with increased infection risk and autoimmune conditions. It has anti-cancer properties. It supports mental health. Low vitamin D is associated with depression, and it has specific cardiovascular protective effects. Most of the population in developed countries is deficient or insufficient in vitamin D, particularly in northern latitudes during winter months. Fortified milk is one of the few common dietary sources. Phosphorus in milk works synergistically with calcium for bone mineralization. It's also critical for ATP production, adenosine triphosphate, the energy currency of every cell. When phosphorus is adequate, cellular energy production is efficient. When it's deficient, cellular energy is compromised. Potassium in milk contributes to blood pressure regulation. Adequate dietary potassium reduces the tendency toward hypertension, particularly in the context of sodium intake. The potassium to sodium ratio in the diet is one of the more important factors in cardiovascular disease prevention. Magnesium, present in meaningful quantities, is involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. It's required for DNA synthesis, muscle relaxation, nerve function, protein synthesis, and glucose metabolism. Magnesium deficiency is remarkably common and is associated with muscle cramps, poor sleep, anxiety, and metabolic dysfunction. Riboflavin and other B vitamins in milk support cellular energy metabolism and neurological function. Conjugated linoleic acid, or CLA, found naturally in milk from grass-fed cows, has been associated with anti-inflammatory and potentially anti-cancer effects. The biological logic of milk is that it evolved as a complete food source for young mammals during a critical growth period. It contains almost everything needed to support life and growth. While human adults have different nutritional needs than growing infants, the complete nutritional profile of milk remains one of the most efficient and bioavailable in the food supply. Now let's talk about something important: context and limitations. Not all milk is created equal. The nutritional profile varies meaningfully based on how the cows were raised, what they ate, and how the milk was processed. Grass-fed milk has higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids and conjugated linoleic acid compared to milk from grain-fed cows. The fatty acid profile is meaningfully different. Full-fat milk retains fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K that are removed when milk is skimmed. The relationship between dairy fat and cardiovascular disease has been substantially reassessed in recent years. The fat in dairy does not appear to have the harmful cardiovascular effects that were assumed for decades. Raw milk contains higher levels of certain beneficial enzymes and probiotics that are destroyed during pasteurization. Raw milk also carries genuine food safety risks, however, which is why pasteurization exists. Lactose intolerance affects a significant portion of the global population, particularly those of East Asian, African, and Native American descent. For lactose-intolerant individuals, lactose-free milk provides the same nutritional benefits without the digestive issues. Hard cheeses and yogurt are also well tolerated by many people who don't tolerate liquid milk. For individuals with dairy allergy, which is different from lactose intolerance and involves immune response to milk proteins, milk is genuinely problematic and should be avoided. The benefits we've discussed apply to regular consumption over time, not to massive quantities. 3 servings of dairy per day is the amount associated with the benefits in most studies. More than that doesn't appear to provide additional benefit and may introduce other concerns. The dairy-cancer relationship is specifically protective for colorectal cancer. There is ongoing research and some controversy regarding breast and prostate cancer and dairy consumption, and the evidence there is less clear. People with family history of these cancers should discuss dairy consumption with their physician in the context of their full health picture. Let's also address the broader argument that has made many people avoid milk, that it's unnatural for adult humans to consume another species' milk. This is a philosophical and anthropological argument more than a health argument. The fact is that genetic variants enabling adult lactose digestion have been strongly selected for in populations with a long history of dairy farming, suggesting that dairy consumption provided meaningful survival and reproductive advantages to those populations over thousands of years. In populations where lactase persistence evolved, the evidence consistently shows that dairy consumption supports health outcomes across multiple systems. The absence of dairy from the diet of populations that consume very little of it is associated with higher rates of vitamin D deficiency, calcium insufficiency, and lower dietary protein quality in many cases. Though these populations often compensate through other dietary strategies, dairy consumption is not biologically unnatural for the populations where it evolved. Let's bring this all together. You have one food that, in a single glass, provides a precursor pathway to melatonin for sleep regulation, a dual protein system for both immediate and sustained muscle repair, calcium that actively binds and eliminates cancer-causing bile acids in the colon, glutathione precursors and bioactive peptides that protect the brain from oxidative damage and cognitive decline, and a matrix of micronutrients that support energy production, bone integrity, nerve function, immune regulation, blood pressure, and hormonal health simultaneously. Most people drink milk without thinking about it, or they stop drinking it based on health advice that is now being reconsidered in light of more sophisticated research. The emerging picture from nutritional science is that whole foods with complex nutritional profiles often outperform single nutrient supplements because the nutrients work synergistically. They enhance each other's absorption and function in ways we're still mapping. Milk is one of the most complete whole foods that exists. The 5 things we've discussed today are not new discoveries exactly, but they represent a more sophisticated understanding of mechanisms that were always present. The advice to drink milk for bone health wasn't wrong. It was just incomplete. The full picture is considerably more interesting than calcium in bones. For practical application, warm milk before bed for sleep. A glass of milk within 30 minutes of exercise for recovery. Regular daily milk consumption for the colon cancer protective effect and the long-term cognitive protective effect. The dose that appears in the research for most of these benefits is 1 to 3 servings of dairy per day, with full-fat dairy providing the most complete nutritional profile for most purposes. Thank you for watching M24 Health. If this gave you a new way to think about how nutrition and your body work together as a system rather than in isolation, subscribe for more research-backed health content. Every system in your body is connected. What you eat matters systemically, not just for the one thing you're worried about today.